It's going to take about. Good morning, everyone. Hope you are ready to cup some coffee, taste some coffee. And that everybody's, if you had your coffee yet this morning, I'm still working on the very last bit of my morning coffee. It's good stuff. Okay. So yeah, we're going to get started here in a few minutes. I'm going to say if you, actually, Jen, what I'm drinking is the Costa Rica anaerobic. Yeah, this one that I had at home and made it and brought it in. So yeah, I got a little cheap. This is probably bad cupping protocol to be drinking the brewed coffee that I'm going to be cupping in a few seconds, but whatever. I also have my adult sippy cup. There's water. I know it says Penrose Brewing on there, but there is water in here. I can promise you that. Yeah, so there was a couple of questions earlier on in the video about boiling water and stuff like that. Definitely get the water boiling. I've got my water over here, and we'll grind the beans in just a little bit as we get started on this whole thing. I did want to say this. I know some of you out there are going to be actually cupping with us and going through the whole process of cupping. But if you're not, if you're just here to have fun and taste them, what I would recommend is that you brew the coffee however you normally brew stuff. And then we will just make sure that when you brew it exactly the same way with both types of coffee. And then when we actually go through the tasting, I'm going to recommend that you find yourself a good soup spoon or something like that, and we can talk about the tasting so that you're tasting them exactly the same way that we are. So if you're not going to cup it with us, that's fine. Just brew the two of them exactly the same way, and we'll get along with it. I've got my cupping bowls here. I've measured out 12 grams of coffee here. I also have my water back here, just about out of boil, I hope. Yeah, water's going, so I'm going to go ahead and start things off by grinding my coffee. I did already purge my grinder, so if you're using a grinder, you might want to run just a few beans through before you put the other beans in to purge it. If there's anything left in there, we did that already here, so I'm good to go this time. Yeah, Sean, for a rocks glass, if you're using typical rocks glasses are either 5 or 7 ounces. I've got a 5-ounce rocks glass, and if you're doing that, I would do 8 grams of coffee in your rocks glass. Good question on that one. And as far as the grind, it's really hard for me to show you that here in a video, but my grind kind of looks a little bit finer than kosher salt. I will try and show that up there. So hopefully that'll be good for you. I have 2 samples of each coffee just because I had the coffee left, so that's what I'm doing. But if you just got one, that's fine. My thought is, by the way, I probably should have said this agenda-wise, if we want to call it that. But what we'll do is we will grind the coffee. We'll kind of get the brewing process started, and we've got a lot of dead space in there while we're waiting for the coffee to brew and while we're waiting for it to cool down. So during that time, I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual coffee, how it's processed, and all that kind of stuff. So we'll kind of get the background story of it. We're not just going to dive right in here, but I do want to get the brewing process started. So this is the Termico that I got going in here. So we go. Now it's water time. If you want to, what you can also do is take a little sniff. See if that anything's coming off. I find that the dry fragrance that we get there can be a little bit, I don't know. I don't get as much off of that as I do when it's wet. So, and then we're going to set a timer for 4 minutes. And we are just going to let that sit there for 4 minutes. Timer. I think my timer is perpetually set to 4 minutes. Yep, 4 minutes. So let that go. And then, while we're waiting for that to brew, I'm going to talk a little bit about these two coffees that we've got. We got these from Genuine Origin. They're Costa Rican coffees. And if you've been to our All About Coffee class, you know a little bit about washed and natural processed coffees. The cherry, the coffee cherry, after it's picked, gets depulped, gets run through a big machine to get some of the pulp and the skin off of the coffee cherry. And after that, sometimes, a lot of times, what happens is they will take that coffee cherry and they'll put it in fermentation tanks. Big water tanks. They look like sometimes a swimming pool. They'll put the coffee cherries, the seeds with sticky, sugary mucilage on the outside. They'll put that in a fermentation tank and let it sit there for, I don't know, 8, 10, 18, 24 hours. It kind of all depends, but somewhere along about a day or so, and they'll monitor it. And what happens in that fermentation tank is the sugars in the mucilage break down and make it easier to wash off of the coffee bean. So when we have a washed processed coffee, all the sugars breaking down, it makes it a whole lot easier to get that sticky mucilage off of the bean. But it does, interestingly enough, have a pretty significant impact on the flavor of the coffee. And up until recently, and by recently I mean in the last, 5, 7 years, the whole fermentation process has kind of been, it's just kind of a thing. They just kind of dump them in the tank there and let it go. And although there was a little bit of people paying attention to it, they didn't really pay a lot of attention to it. Rocks glass, just fill it all the way up to the top, right up to the edge of the top edge of the glass, Sean. They didn't pay a lot of attention to it and didn't pay a lot of attention to what actually is happening with the different bacteria. But now there's some interesting things happening at coffee farms actually paying attention to the fermentation process. So not only are they doing stuff like monitoring it a little bit closer, but there are certain farms that are testing things and mills testing things with adding different yeasts and different other things in there to sometimes lactobacillus and other stuff, so that they, just like they're doing in the beer world, which is exciting, so that they can get different flavor notes or highlight different flavor notes in the coffee. In our particular case here, what we've got is we've got an anaerobic fermentation and what we call a thermico process, or a thermic process. And let me explain what's happening on the anaerobic fermentation first. We need to turn the compressor off. Thank you. On the anaerobic fermentation, instead of putting the coffee cherries just in open tanks that have whatever yeasts and everything, bacteria floating around in the air, in the anaerobic fermentation, they're putting them in hermetically sealed stainless steel containers and letting it ferment in those containers so that it's devoid of any other yeasts or anything else, so that it can develop all on its own. So anaerobic fermentation, we can debate a little bit. Whoops, and there's my timer. About the actual phrase. There's some discussion about whether it's sometimes all fermentation is anaerobic, but whatever. But the anaerobic fermentation, they're putting it in an enclosed stainless steel container so that nothing gets in the way. All right. My timer just went off. It's been 4 minutes. I've been chatting too much. So what we're going to do right now is we've got this nice crust on top of the coffee. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a spoon and I'm going to break the crust, and I'll stick the spoon in there and kind of stir that crust around and get really close in and take a nice big whiff of the coffee. There's a bunch of gases and other aromas underneath that crust that will come out, and I'll be able to smell them. So this is kind of the first thing that we're going to do. I'll go through and do that, and then we got a little bit of time to waste before we actually taste the coffee. So I do have a separate glass of water here too. I like to rinse my spoon between those so I'm not cross-contaminating my samples. All right. I think I don't want to say a lot because I don't want to influence your flavor notes. If you're following along with us, we'll discuss it at the end. But I will say this, and I hope that you have the same experience here, is they are different. Okay, same exact coffee, same farm, all that kind of stuff, processed 2 different ways. So they are different. It's kind of interesting. The next step that we're going to do after this cools down a little bit, and I babble on a whole lot about the thermic process, is we're going to scrape off the grounds that are on the top. I like to just take a couple of spoons. They fit really well in my cupping cups, but if you just have a regular soup spoon, whatever, scrape off the top, because when we do taste the coffee, we don't want to get a whole mouthful of grounds. All right. So we need to let that coffee cool for a little bit. As we're letting that cool, if we taste it right now, your mouth gets nothing but hot, and we want to actually get the flavors. You're going to get more flavor notes and more distinct notes if you taste the coffee when it's actually been cooled for a while. So generally around room temperature is probably the best way to do it. I'm going to give it a little sniff. Yeah, there's some great notes in there. So let's talk about the thermic process a little bit here. You got a little bit that's on the card that came in your pack that's on there. So this is an interesting one that Don Luis has come up with on his own. It's not really popular, and as far as I know, Jen Hurd with Genuine Origin, I think she's still on the thing, but I don't know if anybody else is doing this. Jen, you might be able to chime in and tell me if other people are actually doing this Termico process. But basically what they do is they take the coffee cherry and then they heat it up before it's fermented, and with some of the mucilage on there, and then it starts to actually caramelize. The Maillard reaction starts to happen, so potentially we're going to get some caramel notes, some other notes like that in this coffee. But it's just another way of taking those sugars that are all in the coffee, breaking them down a little bit, maybe changing them a little bit. Yeah, there's lots of anaerobic stuff. That's like the big thing in coffee processing right now. But the Termico and actually heating it, it's got to take a lot of equipment. I haven't actually been to his farm. Maybe one of these days we'll get there, but I'm sure it takes a lot of equipment and care, because you're cooking the coffee cherries, and if, I don't know, coffee cherry soup might happen if you're not careful on there. So, but that's an interesting thought, because if you think about it, the mucilage that's on the cherry is just a whole bunch of sugars, and however we process those sugars is going to affect the flavor. So in this case, with the thermic process, you're caramelizing those sugars in there that'll create different flavor notes on the coffee before it's washed. So interesting way to do it, and we'll find out what they actually taste like. This is still a little bit warm for me to be tasting it, so we're just going to wait for another minute or two for that to cool down. I am. Let's see. We're getting there. Okay, so let's talk about if you're going to be tasting it. No matter how, if you cupped this coffee, if you brewed it the same way we did, then that's great. We're going to go ahead and taste it. If you brewed it on your own, whether it's in a pour over or whatever the case may be, you can go ahead and I would recommend that what you do is you taste it with a spoon, no matter how you brewed your coffee. And what you want to do, get yourself a teaspoon or a tablespoon or something like that, and just get a little bit of the coffee on there. What that's going to allow it to do is the spoon actually helps the coffee to cool down a little bit. And then when you taste it, you want to slurp it into your mouth really intensely. You know, all the things that your grandmother told you not to do when you were drinking soup. But you want to spray it all around the inside of your mouth, and then instead of just swallowing it like we typically do when we're drinking something, is you want to kind of let it stay in your mouth for a few minutes, pay attention to the flavors while it's in your mouth, and then after you swallow it, definitely make sure you pay attention to the aftertaste. I know a lot of times people just drink stuff and it goes right down your gullet, and that's the end of the discussion. So just, we're all about paying attention to what we're actually tasting here. So I've been told on multiple occasions that I have an aggressive slurp. So I don't know if that's good or bad or what, but it is what it is. I'm also going to kind of drink a little water between these so I can get a better idea. Make sure I don't still have that taste in there.
She's heard way louder.
Yeah, I've heard way louder too. It's kind of scary sometimes. They're different. I don't know what state your coffee's in right now, if it's cooled down enough or not. Mine's still a little bit warm to actually get some flavor notes on there, but it's getting there. Yeah, it's getting there. There's some nice notes coming out. Some people ask me when I'm cupping, why do you wait for it to cool down? Because I'll go through here, I'll taste it 2 or 3 times when it's kind of warm. And when I'm doing a a lot of cupping, like production cupping or something like that, I'll actually let it sit for maybe 15 minutes and come back later when the coffee is literally room temperature. A lot of people say, doesn't coffee taste bad? And I think like the coffee my dad used to drink, it tasted bad when it was cold because it was bad coffee. But the reality of life is a lot of specialty roasters and people that actually care about their coffee, it should taste good when it's warm, when it's hot, and believe it or not, even when it's cold. You shouldn't get a lot of flavor change as it gets cooler, like from medium to really cold to room temperature. You shouldn't get a lot of bad flavor notes in there. If you are, there might be a problem with the coffee. The other thing that I want to say is if this is your first time cupping with us, don't get all stressed out about naming all the flavors. If you can say, hey, that one's different than that one, then you're in a great place tasting coffee. You don't have to know all of the different flavors that are on there. That's a learned process. I'm going to talk about them in a few minutes and see what I get out of there, but really, it's when you're just starting out, just saying a couple of noticing that they're different is a great start. All right. Yeah, I'm getting some nice notes in here. I say that, but it's my own coffee. So what am I going to say? Yeah, this is really off. Right? On the anaerobic one of the things that anaerobic coffees, yeah, it's probably the importer's fault. I should return this. Anaerobic coffees, one of the things that everybody says is cinnamon. And yeah, it's not, this one is not like killing me with the cinnamon flavor, but it is definitely, there's some cinnamon notes in there. I get some pininess out of it. When we first tasted this, I remember somebody said, I can't remember who it was that was in the room, but somebody said it tastes like Christmas. And I absolutely, if you brewed this like in a French press, it just, that would, I can see myself sitting around a Christmas tree on Christmas morning. I may save some of this coffee for Christmas, unroasted and then roasted right before Christmas, right? Maybe we should have a Christmas blend of the anaerobic. I wonder if we could do that. On the Termico, man, it's sweeter to me. I'm getting some like unripe strawberry notes in there. One of the things that we talk about in coffee a lot, or two of the terms that we use in cupping, are body and acidity. Acidity is not like pH level, like it's going to bother your stomach type stuff. We're talking about a flavor note that's like a brightness to it. And of these two coffees here, I am getting the Termico has a brighter acidity to it, It's more of a little bit sharper. It's got a little bit of a lemon note to it almost, but not overwhelming. I've had some coffees that are just like, it's like you're drinking lemonade. That's not what I'm getting out of here. I'm getting a nice, like an unripe strawberry. And on the anaerobic, this one's dialed down a little bit. There's still a mild acidity. It's more like a white grape acidity is kind of what I'm getting out of that one. And then, but the body that we're talking about is like the thickness or the heaviness of the coffee, how much it sits on your tongue. Both of these are kind of the same. They're kind of a medium body. I might get a little bit more body out of the anaerobic. There's a little more body out of that one than there is out of the Termico. Yeah, the Termico is definitely sweeter too. Yeah. And the bad part is I'm sitting here with the bag in front of me and I'm looking at the flavor notes. I should really not do that. I should really be cupping this blind. But it's kind of hard to cup it blind when you're setting it up yourself. Yeah, I'm getting some of the cranberry and brown sugar that's in there as well. So Red Zinger tea. I'm not a tea guy. I don't even know what Red Zinger is. Krista, have you had Red Zinger tea? Yeah? Krista's back here like smiling at me going, oh yeah, that's good stuff. So I'm guessing I'm going out and buying some Red Zinger tea today to kind of get that idea of what's going on. Red Zinger. I get the name between cranberry and the strawberry notes that I'm getting. I'm seeing what Red Zinger is going to taste like. Okay. All right. What's some of the stuff? I don't know if you guys are tasting stuff. Feel free to put a note in there of what you're tasting, what kind of flavor notes that are in there for you. Red Zinger tea. Has anybody had Red Zinger tea? Celestial Seasonings hibiscus tea. Okay. Anybody out there saying that it just tastes the same? They both taste the same. That's okay too. This is a very subjective part of the cupping notes. You know what? I'm going to say that both of these are really good coffees. And I'm not just patting myself on the back here. Kara, who roasted these, did a fantastic job. Super proud of what she did. Developing the profile for these. They're really, really good coffees. But on the other side of things, the amount of work that goes into sourcing this stuff, thank you to Genuine Origin, because they're just fantastic coffees. And I'm always impressed these days from the specialty coffee importers that we work with, the amount of work that they put in there, and we consistently get fantastic coffees from all of these. I don't really even have to worry about it when I order stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that goes in there too, but this is one of those fun things where we get a little bit of a look into the farm and the mill and processing and all that kind of stuff that we don't typically get a lot of. And for me, personally, that's what I love about coffee, especially specialty coffee and where it is today and third wave and all that kind of good stuff, is we're getting a lot more connection back to the farm and new processing methods, some experimentation that's happening, stuff like the Termico process. I mean, I don't think that that's going to be like the standard anytime soon. But to be able to have work with mills that are doing these unique, different things with coffees, to me, is a whole lot of fun. So let me take a look. Getting the cinnamon in there on that anaerobic, yeah, A lot of cinnamon that's in there. Oh, cucumber. Okay. Sour cucumber in the termicol. Totally get that. Yeah. That's a good one. I like that, Sean. Some great flavors that are in there as well. So really enjoyed that. Let me throw this out there to you guys. You know, now that you've had the chance to kind of go through the cupping online here, you know, one of the things I love to do. Of course, I'm in coffee. I'm super coffee nerd. So I love to go in and just A/B taste coffees, whether it's my coffee or I get other coffees in. Believe it or not, I do drink other coffees every once in a while. Taste them, compare them, different things. Find one that you like, one that you maybe don't like. Get a couple of friends together. Maybe not today. No, socially distanced, stay away from each other, but cup coffee together virtually. Mulled cider, yeah. The anaerobic, I tell you what, it keeps coming up as Christmas. It's mulled cider, it's holidays, it's whatever you want that's in there. I'm getting a lot of those notes. So want to say thanks to everybody for being on here. Thanks for getting the coffee. I hope you're enjoying brewing these coffees. We're going to post this video over on FreshGround University. If you haven't signed up for that, there's a link top of our webpage. Love to get some comments from you guys over there. But we will definitely keep this up so you can go back, take a look at it as you taste the coffees. Maybe if you taste them a little bit further, go through and definitely leave some notes on there and see what you think. I got one more, Sean. Yeah, so third wave water without having to add the packets. Yeah, already ground Folgers. Bob, you and I need to have a discussion. Third wave water. Sean, I'm going to tell you this. I've got a video in the works that's going to be out in the next couple of weeks, probably about 3 weeks from now, that'll talk a lot about third wave water and how you can make your own third wave water. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of stuff in water coming out of the tap. If you're in the city, tap water has got fluoride and chlorine in it, as well as a whole lot of mineral content that does different things to your water. So by taking distilled water, which I hope is what you use, which is just H2O. It's 2 molecules of hydrogen and oxygen. There's no chlorine, no fluoride, no nothing that's in there. If you take that and just add a little bit of mineral content, it brings everybody to exactly the same place so that we're all using the same water. It all brews the same. But yeah, we're going to go super deep and nerdy into water here in the next couple of weeks. So keep your eyes open for that. So, all right, guys, thank you for hanging in there. I appreciate you being here for the last 34 minutes. Hope you have a great Saturday. And if you're in the Midwest, definitely stay dry. So, and for those of you, Jen, hoping you guys are doing well out there in Portland. Hoping that everything clears up soon. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.